Internet. Welcome back to Mind Your Own Business, the podcast where successful entrepreneurs share their tips and information they have that will help you to be successful in your own business. Today, I'm super excited to have with you a friend and a successful businesswoman, Rhoda Sommer. I met Rhoda long ago, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the podcast. But Rhoda has a YouTube channel called Fab and Fit Over 40, and it is an exercise channel for women who are 40 and over. And so we're going to talk to her. I'm not going to tell you much more about that. I'm going to let her do it. Welcome, Rhoda. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you, Stacy. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So Rhoda is actually streaming in from
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Thank you very much. So Rhoda, why don't you take a minute here and introduce yourself to the audience so they know a little bit about you.
Okay. I'm Rhoda. I grew up in a military family, which is, we'll talk about how I know Stacy, because we moved around a great deal. And I ended up in New Hampshire, which is where my parents were from. So we got stationed back in this area quite a bit. So this is home to me. I did the typical off to college, didn't finish, went to visit my grandparents in Florida, stayed for 10 years.
Wow.
Met my future and ex-husband there, came back to New Hampshire with my 2.5-year-old daughter, went back to school, very unconventional, and got my degrees that way at night while working during the day. Met my current husband when I had said I will never get married or have more children ever again, through Rotary, where a woman said, "Oh, you have to meet this person." So long story short, I have 3 children now. We've been married for about 26 years. And the rest, I guess, is, as they say, history. I love to ski, both water ski and snow ski, especially snow ski. I'm very active. I enjoy being outdoors. I kind of love life.
That's awesome. So I reconnected with Rhoda when last year I decided it was time to drop a lot of extra weight I was carrying around. And I kind of joined a scammy website on weight loss and published a little bit about it on Facebook. And Rhoda came to me and said through Facebook messaging, "Hey, I have this online exercise program. You ought to check it out." And I got to tell you what, it was one of the best conversations I've ever had. It helped me a lot, and I've talked to some other women, encouraged them to do that. So we're going to talk about Rhoda's fitness channel today. But first, I want to ask you a question. So tell me how you got interested in fitness.
Good question. I really didn't get interested in fitness until I was 38 years old. My son was born rather late. We were 38 is kind of late. It still is. And I just started exercising. I started doing DVDs, and I found out that I kind of liked it. And so I pursued how to become a trainer, how to become a group exercise instructor. That was the good old aerobic days, grapevines and hamstring curls and that kind of thing, very dancey.
Sure.
I'm not very dancey, but I did all right with that. That led to owning a couple gyms, which led to ultimately me doing this YouTube channel. And it's interesting you talk about being motivated by a friend, because I talked about doing a YouTube channel, and I always said, if I were younger, because I'm 61 now and I was 57 then, if I were younger, this would have been great. I would have done this. And I was with a friend running, and she is very motivating. She said, "Stop talking about this. Just go do it.
Just go do it." Right.
And honestly, had I known then what I know now, maybe I might not have done it, but I did it. And so here I am, and it's growing and it's successful, and I'm psyched about it.
Well, taking back to the gym. So I know that you've talked to me and you've told me that you owned a couple of gyms, and I just don't even understand how you could do that with having kids and a family. But I guess we just do what we have to do. But how did you get into those gyms? I'm curious about that.
Okay. This is kind of a fun story because there's a major gym chain that is stationed here in New Hampshire, low budget, $10 a month. I think they've gone up to 15 now. I contacted them because I saw a retail space and I said, this would be a great place for that gym. So I contacted them and explained the location, and they said, no, population's not the density that we would want to do anything there. Well, within months, they were putting a corporate gym in that location.
Really?
Meanwhile, we moved about 15 miles away, which would have been a 25-minute trip to that gym. So it was just far enough. And we were in a very small town of 4,900 people. It was just far enough that if somebody joined that gym, they would not go because it was too far away. So I started researching and I found Anytime Fitness. They had a model that was called an express. So it was a half-size gym. It was for small communities like that. So we did it, and it grew, and it became, very successful. I think because I'm very customer service oriented. So then we did a full-size gym, about half hour away, in the other direction, and that became successful. And ultimately, I sold the smaller one, and then sold the larger one to corporate Anytime Fitness. So it was a lot. And like you say, with the children, I did it for, 5 years. It was enough.
So you had Anytime Fitness, that was your gym?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did you do it with your husband?
He is a business manager. He's an accountant.
Okay.
So he did that piece because that's not me.
Right. I've talked about the 3 pillars of owning a business. And if you do not have the 3 things that you need, which is customer service and sales is one, financial information is one, and the operations, you need to have someone who does. Because if you don't have those 3 pillars, you will not be successful. So when you were running the gym, did Anytime Fitness have a specific model that they wanted you to follow with some flexibility, or was it just strictly, here are the ways that we want you to run this business?
They were great as far as training and, things like this, 24-hour gym, key access. This was new. This was a new concept then. And so they would provide, they provide the vendors for the key access, provide the vendors for the, T-shirts and water bottles you sold, the design. They had preferred agreements with 3 or 4 fitness equipment companies. So it was your business, but they helped you with, pre-negotiated rates and contracts with the providers of your security, of your key access, of all of that. So they gave you a leg up, really, because if you had to set that all up from the ground floor, first of all, that's a lot of different, like you're talking about the 3 pillars. That's about 10 pillars, right?
Right.
Of things I don't know anything about security and key access and all of that. So they provided the vendors but you did choose who you wanted to work with, which was nice.
Okay. So when I thought about gyms way back when I used to work out when I was in my early 40s and was going to the gym regularly, I hadn't really thought about workout classes. And so I want to ask you, is that something that you offered then, or was it more strictly related to weightlifting, which is what even though I know better, I still kind of think about that as a gym. That's where you go to lift weights.
Okay.
Were you able to offer those classes?
Yes. It was a small space. And it's kind of funny because like the back hallway almost, it was a big space for a hallway, but it wasn't a big space for, an exercise room. The bathrooms were off of it. And that's kind of where we started with my group exercise, 4 or 5 people in the class. And ultimately the business next door left. And so a door was put in to an actual exercise space. And at that time, you're exactly right as far as what Anytime Fitness evolved with the way, going from that weightlifting, treadmill, kind of model to more of a functional, group dynamic, doing things that are going to help you, every day in your life versus, okay, I'm going to go and do the treadmill and I'm going to do the leg press. So
Sure.
it became much more personal.
So, off camera, we talked about that you have a degree in marketing, and so I know that you had to use that. But how did you work to get people into the gym who might not otherwise think about going to a gym?
One of the things that Anytime Fitness was very good at was giving you ideas, and they had something called Vitals, where they would come once a year to different areas. So I would go down to Boston and attend Vitals, and they had great ideas about, really, it was community based. So their gyms are smaller. And so bringing baskets to the school with, things for the teachers, things for their classrooms, and then, 7-day passes in there, bringing in, teachers and really trying to make it, because it's intimidating. I mean, I joined a gym a few years ago and I didn't go for 6 weeks because I was scared. Okay. So that's me. So imagine this gym opens up in this town. Nobody's had a gym in this town. It's a tiny town, 4,900 people. And that's scary, right? And that's for somebody else. So it's really connecting with the local community, the police department, the fire, doing that guerrilla marketing that,
Yeah.
it's face to face, right? You're not putting big ads in. There aren't big newspapers. There's not a radio station to advertise on that doesn't reach, way beyond your market area. So it really was at face to face. And I think that really brought people in. They got to know me. They knew me in the community. I had children that went to school in the community. So it made it more accessible and more comfortable. And once a few people went and said, oh, it's not scary at all, and giving free passes and allowing people to bring guests for, 3 times and just being very friendly. One of the things that Anytime Fitness provided was I'm in my office, and because we have key passes and everybody has to key in, the door is always locked. You have to key in. Their picture pops up with their name. So I can say, Stacy, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. And don't I look so great at what I do? But I had that help. They
Sure.
didn't know that necessarily, right. But it was that one-on-one, that customer service that really made, I think, it comfortable for people.
Okay, so let's go back and talk about what prompted you to get a gym. I mean, I remember, I know from your exercise videos, you talk about that you were running, and I think you've been skiing since high school, since you moved back there. Yeah. But a gym in a town of 4,900, what made you think or know that this was going to be successful? Because I frankly would be afraid to do something like that with such a small community of support.
Mm-hmm. A lot of that goes to my husband, writing the business plan, really determining, will this work? And it was a half-size gym. This was not a massive gym. It was a very small, like cottage industry kind of gym. It was very comfortable. How I had the original idea was to that big space that I told you about, right? Mm-hmm. So it was in my mind. And you have to understand, this was years and years ago. This was very early in my career as a personal trainer. Very early. So I'm green. I'm very green. I don't know what I don't know. So I think sometimes when you're at that place of being green, kind of you take maybe risks, a little bit.
Sure you do.
This model fit as far as size-wise. And Anytime Fitness would not have allowed us to open it if it did not fall within certain, demographic needs and that kind of thing. So the business plan for my husband, working with them, and just taking a risk. Opening a business is risky no matter what it is.
No kidding.
You know that.
Yeah, I do, for sure. So how long did you have the gym?
About 5 years.
5
years. The first one for 5 years, the second one for about 3.5.
Did you have 2 at the same time?
Yes.
Where were your kids? Yeah. Were they working? Were they doing their homework in the back? Were they cleaning weights?
Luckily, their school was right down the street.
Okay.
If you think about how a gym is busy in the morning, early morning, right? The people are going to work. And then it's
sure.
busy from like 9 to 11. Those are your seniors that are coming in. And then it is dead, like as a doornail, until about 3:30. So I run home, I prep dinner, I make dinner, I do laundry, I do cleaning. I then meet the bus, get the kids home, get them set up. I go back to the gym. I teach all my classes that start around 4:30 through 7:30, and then I come home and put them to bed. Meanwhile, my husband comes home from work at 6:30, dinner's all set, So it was a balancing act for sure. The first year I owned my smaller gym, I keyed into that gym 359
Holy
days
moly.
that year. Yeah, because it was small. I didn't have a huge staff. It was me. It really was me and a couple other personal trainers. So it was a lot. It really was a lot. And like I say, it was kind of like the YouTube channel. Had I known, I don't know. But it worked. It really did work. And it was a juggling act. But I did get to drop my kids off at school. I would go and do 5 a.m. classes. I would go home, get them breakfast, pick them up, drop them off at school, go back to the gym.
So what you've talked about is something that I delve into regularly on my channel, which is to say that owning your own business is not a side hustle. It's not something you can just, not something you can fit in. There's nothing, you can do one thing great. You can do 2 things well. You can do 3 things pretty good. Start adding 4 things and something has to go. Something has to suffer. Right. And I'm thinking that based on what you've talked about, where you get 5 hours of sleep, it's probably because you had to train yourself that you couldn't get any more. Your schedule sounds really crazy. So that leads me, of course, to my next question, which I think if I was leading your life, I would have probably walked out. But what prompted your decision to to sell the gyms? Did you sell them or sell them back to corporate? What prompted that decision?
Well, it's hard. You don't really think about it when we did think about it, and obviously in a business plan, margin. It's a low ticket item, right? My gym membership was $35 a month. And so it cost you, $7,000, $8,000 just to keep the AC on, because those machines are just eating up they're so hot. So it was a financial decision. We were doing okay, but we weren't getting rich, that's for sure. And the possibility was open more, right?
Oh, which means more time. You're going to give up time. You're going to give up time with your family. You're going to give up everything because you've got more businesses, and you're going to give up money.
It's a different thing too. You become you're running it from up here, right?
Yes.
You're not in the gym.
Right. Yeah. You're not reaching out or touching your customers at that point.
Right.
That's really easy to lose touch, I guess. Suddenly, now somebody's doing things that you might not want to do, but you're looking at it from the big picture, and you have to go manage 3 other buildings, so you can't have your finger on every single thing. Mm-hmm. So when did you buy the gyms, and when did you sell them in years?
Started in 2010.
Oh,
and I guess it would be 2016 was when things kind of wrapped up.
Okay. And during that time, let's go back. I hope I didn't already ask you this. Were you teaching classes? Oh, in that little back hallway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Had you been doing that before, or did you just add that as part of a service for the gym?
Before I had the gym?
Yes.
Okay. Initially, my personal training certification came through the University of New Hampshire, and that's where I got my experience as far as group exercise, which is my favorite thing to do, is lead group exercise.
I know that.
It almost feels like that. But honestly, we haven't talked about this either. You just asked a really cool question. When I moved, and that's what I did, right? I did exercise. So I found this old barn, and it was in the back of a house. There was no heat. All right.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
And I just put an ad in our very little local, delivered once a week flyer newsletter. And they came out of the woodwork. It was an aerobics class. That's how I really met people in the community. I had 25 women regularly, twice a week, that came and did aerobics in this space where I brought the music in with a little, your
boombox
we had, right? Yeah, boombox.
There we both are from the 80s.
Yeah. And we're on this wood floor that was a barn, right? And the floor moved. It was a lot of fun, though. I met so many great women. And I think that probably helped when I opened the gym, too, because I had established myself as somebody who understood this kind of thing, knew how to teach fitness, right? But yeah, that's how that happened.
So in the 5 years that you owned the gym, or nearly 6 years, tell me what was the biggest change that you saw over time? Or did you? Was there
change in what?
In the
myself?
Whole, just
the
no, in the business.
In the business.
Yeah.
Well, I saw it really change from that model you talked about, right? Where it's a room of treadmills and I mean, Anytime Fitness did not have group exercise as part of their business model or part of their layout initially. And over that time is kind of when that transition really happened, not just with their gyms, but all gyms. Like, we've got to bring in more personal training. We've got to bring more one-on-one, and we've also got to have a group dynamic, as well as that functional thing where, I mean, you didn't have any BOSU balls or, TRX or any of the type of tools that you might see in a boot camp, right? A boot camp type of setting,
Sure.
The ladders that you run through, things like that. We didn't have that. You came in, you got on the treadmill, you did your rotation in your strength equipment, or you went over to the dumbbell area, mostly men, and did your lifting. So we kind of just added that because that's what I had done in that community. We added that group space, and I literally had to do a 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 class, 3 classes, to get 15 people, exercising. So that was before, that other space became available.
Sure.
And that was the end of owning that gym.
Wow. Gosh, you've put about 100,000 questions into my head, which I'm not going to be able to address all of them, but I'll talk to you some other time about those. We're drawing to a close now, so I want to ask you this question. When you and your husband decided that you were going to close these gyms, did you have an idea in mind of how you were going to continue your fitness training for others? Or were you thinking you might do something else? Or were you thinking it's time to sit on the couch and maybe catch up on some sleep?
I did not do that. I did not catch up on some sleep. I sold the smaller gym to a gym member. And I talked to a couple people before I picked this woman. I didn't pick her, but you know what I mean? Go and offer. So we coached her and we helped her. We provided the financing, for example, things like that to make this possible for her. And I continued to teach my classes. Not all of them, but my 5 a.m. class, which was my bad babes in beast mode, I won't say that word. This had a waiting list. You couldn't get into this class because there was space for 12 people. And I have to talk about this group of women because they were just so powerful with each other. The culture that we created in that one class was just something I've never seen before and may never see again. It was magical. And yes, I left fitness. I went and became the social media manager and development officer for the local private school. Public private school, which is a weird thing, where my kids went.
Okay.
And I did that for a few years. I needed a break.
Yeah, well, I bet after teaching all those classes. I mean, I take 30 minutes with you about 5 days a week, and I need a break. So I want to thank you very much for joining me today. And we're actually going to do a part 2 of this, where we are going to talk about your YouTube channel and how you are changing lives, including your own. I want to thank everybody for joining, and thank again Rhoda Sommer, who I always think of as Rhoda Carter from back in the day. Want to remind you that if you enjoyed this episode, please click the thumbs up and tune in to Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll see you next time on Mind Your Own Business.